Hello, this is Julie Bosler from Larmer. We're presenting some webinars on the new features in UPK 12.1. I've already done one about the conceptual and complex content, and this one is the second of two webinars. This is focusing on simulation content. The first subject we're going to have a look at a new feature called player skins. So this is quite new, but it is building on existing functionality. So we currently style or have styled the player through the UPK styles that are in the system folder. Player skins enables you to customise the appearance of the player right through to topic bubbles by applying a customised skin separately to the player style. So, for example, you might use the skin to ensure that all your topics meet the requirements of a corporate style guide with colours and font choices. Also, there's a grey skin available in the developer which you can use as an alternate to the standard style. So if you have a look at this screen capture here, this is what the bubble looks like when you're using a grey skin in publishing. So all the functionality is there, as you'd expect, but it looks quite different. That just gives you a bit of an idea about what can be done. And the beauty of skins is that they provide a way of customising the player that does not involve duplicating and customising the player's style. It's a quicker and easier process, and you're not needing to recreate your changes every time the developer's updated to a new version. So if we have a look at the topic, let's have a look at how it works. Okay, so you can create a new skin at any time. It's just like creating any other new document within the library. Okay, so this is a new skin. As you see here, it looks a bit like a package. It's got the same functionality in that you can add files, add folder, create a HTML file. The difference here is that the skin contains a default set of files which can be used to customise the player. So within the language folder, you can drill down and there's a resource file there, XML file. You can put in your customisations in that file. Similarly, there's a config XML file and there's a custom CSS file. Now, these are for the empty versions of what we'll find in the player style. What we're going to do is we're going to go over to the player style in the library, copy the bits that we want to customise, and paste them into these files here, because the skin will override whatever's in the player style. If there's anything that you haven't covered within the skin, then it defaults to whatever's in the player style. Okay, so we're going to switch to the library, expand the system folder. Okay, so I'm sure we're all familiar with system and then publishing styles, UPK. This is our standard publishing style. And we have a player style here. If you double click that to open it, we find that in here we have the custom XML file, the config XML file and the custom CSS file. There's the CSS one, there's the config file. So these are the things which define how the player looks and works. We're now going to take what we want from here, copy it into the skin and make whatever customisations we want to do. So we can edit these things as text files in Notepad. You probably need to use a right-click context menu to open this in Notepad. We're just going to cheat a little in the topic and double-click to open it. So this is what the config XML file looks like, and we're specifically interested in this case in the player config settings. So these are things like enabling cookies, the width of various items, show frame ID, that's the one we're specifically interested in, double background colour. All these things are helping define how the player looks and works. What we want to do is copy all the necessary coding across to the new file in the skin and then adjust whatever we need to. It's important that we get all the necessary coding. You'll find all these sorts of codings have an opening tag, in this case config section with a name, and a closing tag, which is the / config section. So we need everything from the opening to the closing in order for the functionality to work. Similarly, each line in here has an opening tag, so it's an item with a name and a closing tag, /item. So opening tag and closing tag, that's a whole piece of code. Okay, so in this case we're copying the whole player config section. I'm going to close the notepad file, and then we're going to open the skins config XML file in Notepad and paste in the code that we've just copied. I'm just going to Control V. Okay, it's really important again that we keep the hierarchy of opening and closing tags. So we have to paste within the opening tag of config the closing tag of /config. So we need to keep this hierarchy going. We've got opening tag config, opening tag config section, opening tag item, and then going back we've got a / closing tag item, / config section closing tag, / config closing tag. This is a little just a reminder of what the formatting needs to look like. Okay, so we need to have a name there, the item needs to have a name, and then we have a second value here. Okay, so there are all these prompts about what to do, and if any of it goes wrong, it just won't work, basically. It probably won't break anything, but it just won't work. So what we're going to do here is just keep the item that we want to customize, in this case the show frame ID item. All the other ones we're just going to delete from the player skin, and we're going to just let those apply as the defaults in the current player style. Okay, so in this case the only thing we want to do is keep the show frame ID, because what we're going to do with the skin is have the frame ID displayed in each frame of our topic. So that's the purpose of this skin. So I'm just going to delete all the other items by magic. Okay, so we've got this config section, player config here, with the opening and closing tags and the item opening and closing tags. Show frame ID, this setting defaults to off, but in this case we're going to make it on, so we're going to have the frame ID showing. So we save that, and we close the file. So that's the skin file now has been amended and saved. We need to save the skin itself. Now, because it's a new skin, we need to give it a name and save it somewhere within the library. Again, we can save it anywhere we like. So we could save it in the system folder with the other skins if we wanted to, or we can save it with our specific project files if we want to, and that's what we're going to do here. So we've given us a name, frame ID, because that's what this particular skin is all about, and we're saving it within our project files. Switch back to the outline editor. Okay, so now we're publishing our outline. We've skipped ahead within the publishing wizard to the very last page, which is where we get to select the settings. And in this case, we want to choose the skin to apply. So if I click the Browse button, I go and find our new skin and select it, and then click the Publish button. We'll find that the skin now has been applied to this published content. And if I click Try It Mode, we'll find that the frame ID is now being displayed as part of the topic. And that's as a result of the new skin that we created. So as we go through the topic, we see that each frame ID is displayed there. Okay, so I'm just going to close that for now. The grey skin, which is a default one that's, well, not a default, it's come with the UPK content, and we can choose that as an alternate skin to apply. That's available in the System Publishing Styles folder, so we've browsed and selected that. We publish. Okay. So one of the first things we notice here is that the background of the concept pane is now a grey, sort of a pinkish grey, I think. So the skin has overwritten the settings otherwise. It's changed the background colour of the concept pane. And if we play the topic in quiet mode, we'll see the bubbles look very different, and I think they look quite good. So it's a lot cleaner sort of style. The fonts are different, the general appearance is different. Oops, clicking wrong. Okay, here we go. So again, the bubble is looking quite different on the action frames. Now, it's interesting that, especially within the Microsoft Excel target application, the bubble kind of disappears into the application, as it were. It doesn't stand out. That's not going to draw the user's eye. So that's sort of a downside of this within this application. It might be, absolutely the right choice for a different application. But if you have a look at the old bubble compared to this one, at least it does draw the user's eye, I think. So anyway, it gives you an idea of all the possibilities. So that's a bit of a look at player skins. We'll move on now to the Publishing Wizard summary page. I think we're all familiar with this last page. When we're running the Publishing Wizard, we get to the end page, we have a number of links that will take us to the activity log, to the location where the content was published, or a link to launch the published content. The important thing now is that the Publishing Wizard remains open rather than closing automatically. So you can navigate to whichever link you want and then close the wizard only when you're finished. So if we have a look at how it works in this topic. So here we are, we've done a publish, we've got some warnings. So what we're going to do is go look at our activity log. We have a look at that. And we close it. Now normally, once we've done that, the Publishing Wizard would have automatically closed in the background, and we wouldn't then be able to go and use these other links. So I think this is a really good feature. So we can also use the link to have a look at where the files were published to. We can use the link to launch the player. And there's also a link to the in-application support information page. So if your techie guys need to know a bit more information about how to hook the content up to the in-application support, there's some guidance there. So all of those things are available, and they remain so while the Publishing Wizard remains open. And it remains open until you choose to close it. At some point you will need to, though, because you can't actually use UPK while the Publishing Wizard is open. It does block you from keeping it open and using UPK in a separate window. So if you just click finish, and it's gone. So I think that's a great feature and will save us a bit of time. So the next thing, we're just going to have a brief look at the share links. Now this has been expanded to allow users to be much more flexible when they're sharing content. I'm sure you all remember that on the header of the player, there's a share link icon available, and the user clicks on that, and they're given a link that they can then copy and send by email to a colleague or what have you. And this is an example of what they see from the player when they click that share link icon. Now it defaults to view outline. This is a new feature. If they leave that ticked, then basically the link will detail exactly where they were within the content, and it will remember exactly what modules and sections were expanded, what topic was selected, what have you. It's sort of basically going to duplicate whatever the user was looking at when they clicked the share link feature. Okay, and then also new is that if they're sharing a link from within the topic, they can choose from between 3 different options. So the default is that if they share the link, the colleague they're sharing it with will begin the topic from the beginning. So that's providing them a link that will directly launch that topic from the start. Or they can select this third option, which is starting the topic at the particular frame the user was in. So that's getting really specific, that's getting right down to frame level. Or the first option is that they can share the outline with the topic selected. So that's kind of the equivalent thing as sharing from the player with a specific topic selected. So there's a lot more functionality there, and that gives the user a few choices in specifically what they want to share. Okay, so we're now going to have a look at default mode settings. So within the options dialog box, there's a new page called topic, and a lot of the other features on this page are familiar. It's just been a bit of a reorganisation, but this first one is quite new. So as you'll remember, when it comes to individual topics, you can specify whether they're available in all 5 modes or not for the player or for an LMS, and you can specify whether sound is applicable or not. Well, those mode settings are now also available in the options dialog box. So you can set them globally, and they will apply to all newly created topics. So if you've decided that in your particular project you don't want to have do it mode or you don't want to have know it mode, you can just turn it off at this global level, and then all new topics that you create will reflect that. So that's a good time-saving device. And like all of these things, what you can do in individual circumstances is override that. So if you decide you do want a particular one available in know it mode, you can turn that back on at the individual topic level. Okay, so while we're still in the options dialog settings, you'll find that the sound format has been simplified. Before we used to have to choose between different quality settings for the audio. Well, now they've streamlined that. They've chosen to go with the AAC format, which is providing a higher quality sound file. It's more broadly compatible, and it's a better quality to file size ratio. So they've decided on this particular format as meeting our needs. We don't have to choose between different quality settings. So the only thing we get to choose between is whether we have no sound at all, whether we have the keyboard and mouse clicks only, or whether we record all available sound. So that's all a bit more streamlined and straightforward for us, and hopefully the sound quality is also better as well. Another thing we can set while we're in the options dialog box is the default applicable view. So this applies when we are using the in-application support feature. So this is where we set it up so that the end user can launch the UPK content directly from the target application, from the help menu, the context-driven the source of UPK content. What we can do is choose what the end user then sees when that's launched from the application. So the default and what has been applicable up until now is the applicable list. So what this does is launch the player, it's filtered just to show a list of topics that apply to that particular frame. and there's no further sorting, it's just a list of topic names. However, we can choose to instead show the applicable outline, which will launch the player. It's still filtered to only show those applicable topics, but it's organised within the pared down outline structure, so it's just a bit more information and context for the end user. And I'm sure you remember that the end user did have the ability to switch between these two views. This is really just us saying up front what we want the default view to be for them. The third option we can choose is that all the content will be displayed, so no matter where they launch it from, they would just see the whole outline. They wouldn't have a filtered content available. Target applications. This is just pointing out that with every new release, Oracle are extending the support available for target applications for recording environments and operating systems, and for the web browsers that are supported. So the highlights that they are particularly pleased with this time are that the Windows 8.1 platform is now supported. We've got compatibility with Internet Explorer 11, Firefox 24, Chrome 33, and then those other target applications are listed there. There are full details available on the Oracle site if you need to go in and have a look at exactly what release number they're up to for your particular target applications. Okay, so we're going to finish with 3 different bits of functionality here that are available within the topic editor, all of which I think have their uses. The first thing is that we can delete multiple frames now. So it used to be that you could select multiple frames within the topic editor, and then the only option was to copy them. That was the only thing you could do. But now you can either cut them and paste them or delete them. So I think that's going to be quite a time saver for when we're editing and repurposing topics. And I don't know if you remember, but if you have to delete every frame and confirm the deletion for a run of 10 frames or whatever, it's a bit tedious. So this will save us a bit of time, I think. It's just a brief look at doing that. Okay, so we start by selecting the frames we wish to cut or delete. So the first frame is selected. We'll just shift and click to select 3 frames in this instance. Selected frames are shown in this sort of mid-level green, and the current frame that we're looking at is the slightly lighter green. Now if I right-click those selected frames and get the options, in this case we want to cut them. Now we select the frame after which we want to paste them. Right-click again and we can paste them in here. Okay, so you can also cut and paste between topics, so we could have taken them to another topic and pasted them there. For the purposes of demonstrating the feature though, we'll now delete these currently selected frames, so we still have those 3 frames selected. And the delete function is available still from the delete drop-down menu, and you'll notice it now says delete frames because it knows we have 3 selected. And they're gone. So that's just a demonstration of the fact that it works, and I think that's really good. Print areas is something that's quite entirely new. So if you remember, I'll just scroll down a bit so you can see both graphics. If you remember, in job aids and other document outputs that include a little graphic about where you're doing a particular action, the size and placement of the graphic was based on the action area. Now, in this case, you can see the action area is covering an empty cell in a spreadsheet, which doesn't really convey any information. So what you can do is add a print area. That's this second area here with the dotted border and a sort of lighter pink colour. you can add a print area and make it larger or indeed smaller than an action area, and then that's what defines what gets shown in the job aid. So I think that's really an interesting development. So if we just go have a quick look at how that works. So this is just a dramatised version of that same example. So the graphic here is just an empty cell, which really doesn't look very useful. We're going to close the job aid. Here's the relevant frame in the topic editor. Sure, we're all familiar with this little menu here, modify action areas. Now we have some more options here though. We don't just have the action area options, we now have create print area. And they are related, and you can create them and edit them in all the same sorts of ways. So they're not sort of new in that sense, but it is a new idea. Okay, so I've just created a new print area. By default, it will appear in the centre of the screen. In this case, I moved it because it was sort of sitting behind the bubble, which wasn't much use to us. Now it is an oblong shape rather than a square. If you remember, if you create a new action area, it's a square, and it doesn't have the dotted outlines around it. So they're quite easily identifiable, I think. You can move it and resize it just as you can with an action area. So in this case, we've moved it so that it's providing more of a context for where the action area is. And in this case, the print area is larger than the action area. But I think it's going to be just as useful. But sometimes you want a smaller print area. So if the action area is huge, what if it's half the screen? Because, the user can actually click anywhere in the screen. You might actually just want a smaller print area then, so you're not using up half your job aid with a big blank field. So yeah, I think again it's quite a flexible thing, and it will be useful in different ways. Okay, so if I minimise this and we republish our job aid, there it is with the new graphic, and hopefully that's sort of providing a bit more information to the end user. Okay, so that's print areas, and then jumping points. And again, I'm very pleased with this development. We can now add jumping points to decision frames and explanation frames in the topic, not only to action frames. So I think that's really good. I often found myself wanting to add jumping points to explanation frames because they do tend to mark the beginning of a new part of the process. And decision frames as well, they're almost by definition, they're marking at the beginning of a new process of one sort or another. So if we just run through the little topic. Okay, so we're currently at a decision frame in the topic, and all we need to do is click into the jumping point and type in the text. And I'm not going to be able to type properly, am I? Okay, and that's it. So we save and publish the topic. So the jumping points just work as we're familiar with, but they're just going to be available in many more frames than they were. So if we now look at our jumping point, that's the one we just created, choose the currency format. And the other two examples, you'll just have to set my word for it, they link to explanation frames. If we click there, it takes us to the decision frame. So I think that's really great. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. We've gone through fairly quickly all the new features in UPK 12.1. I hope you found it useful, and I hope it's really sort of got your imaginations invigorated, thinking about all the different ways you can use these in your projects. We do run a day's training course which really goes into a lot more detail about exactly how you can make these things work. So do feel free to contact us if you think that can be useful for you. Thank you very much for your time and attention.